There are stories that live in the shadows, whispers from beyond, encounters we cannot explain. This is Beyond the Veil, where the unknown is never far away.
Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us once again, Beyond the Veil. I'm Brett Rogers, and as always, I'm joined by Rear Admiral Lee Wise.
Good evening. Many a title.
got to have a title for every episode. And tonight we're delving into the phenomena known as EVP, electronic voice phenomena, with two incredible stories. Now, you have heard both of these stories, haven't you, Lee?
I have indeed.
It's a bit of a rare format for the podcast that Lee or myself would know everything about the stories, but it's because these were submitted to us in response to our recent appearance in Hull Live, our local news website. So some people reached out to us with these stories, and interestingly enough, to get one EVP story is something quite remarkable, but to get two, is even more so, really. So
I think it's because, and which makes them intriguing, is it's something a little bit more than just a story, and it's almost some props that come with it.
We've got a bit of evidence, haven't you?
A bit of evidence.
Yeah. Bit of evidence. You know, it's one thing to have a story of something that happened to you, or even have someone who experienced it with you as well. But to have a physical piece of evidence is always, well, it gives the story more genuity, if you will, more credibility. So, but for those who aren't aware, what is EVP? Well, electronic voice phenomena, or EVP, is the name given to sounds captured on a recording device that appear to be voices, but were never heard by the human ear in the moment. They are often brief, a word, a phrase, sometimes just a whisper, and yet for those who experience them, they can feel unmistakably real. The idea itself isn't new. In fact, the roots of EVP go back to the mid-20th century. In the late 1950s, a man named Frederick Jurgensen claimed to have accidentally recorded voices while taping birdsong, voices that he believed belonged to the dead. This caught the attention of Latvian psychologist Konstants Raudive, who went on to record thousands of similar anomalies, eventually publishing his findings in a book titled Breakthrough in 1971. From that point on, EVP became one of the most widely discussed forms of alleged spirit communication. Today, EVP is considered part of something known as instrumental transcommunication, or ITC. Just sounds like a type of train, that, doesn't it?
It does, actually.
Yeah. The idea that
EVP, I think.
Yeah, I'm not so keen on instrumental transcommunication. No. The idea that spirits or unknown intelligences may be able to communicate through electronic devices such as tape recorders, radios, phones, and even televisions, devices designed to catch a signal, but perhaps picking up something else. Those who believe in EVP often describe it as a form of direct communication. They claim these voices respond to questions, call out names, even warn or comfort. Some recordings are faint, almost impossible to interpret, while others seem disturbingly clear. But here's where things become a little more complicated, because outside of paranormal belief, science has a very different explanation. Most scientists agree that EVP is not evidence of the dead speaking, but rather a phenomenon known as auditory pareidolia, the brain's natural tendency to find patterns in randomness. It's the same reason we see faces in clouds or shapes in shadows, except this time we're hearing words in noise. When we listen to static, white noise, or distorted audio, our brains actively try to make sense of it, to organise it, to interpret it, and sometimes it fills in the gaps, creating something that feels like a voice, even when none exists. In fact, studies have shown that when people are told what a sound might say, they are far more likely to hear those exact words, meaning expectation can shape perception. There are other explanations too. Radio interference, fragments of broadcast signals bleeding into recordings, faulty equipment, and digital compression artifacts, even deliberate hoaxes. And yet, despite all of this, the phenomenon refuses to disappear, because not all EVP are easily dismissed. Some recordings have been studied under controlled conditions, experiments dating back to the 1960s, including work led by Professor Hans Bender, great name, attempted to capture and analyse these voices scientifically. I mean, we are recording this on the 30th of March. If I had said that name on 1st of April, you would have thought that that was
Hans Bender. I'm still not
Hans
sure.
Bender. Yeah, Professor Hans Bender.
Professor, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, at least give him his title for God's sake. He's earned that.
He has, by his name alone. An honorary professor.
Hans Bender. It's real, but it certainly doesn't sound it. In some cases, researchers reported recording voices that they could not fully explain, but even then the results were inconsistent, difficult to replicate, and never strong enough to be accepted as proof, which leaves EVP in a strange place, caught between two worlds. On one side, science tells us this is perception, pattern recognition, the brain creating meaning from chaos, while on the other, there are those who insist these voices are real, that they respond, they answer questions, that they know things they shouldn't, and perhaps that's where EVP becomes truly unsettling, because the question isn't just, are these voices real? It's this: if they're not, why do they feel like they are? And if they are, who or what is speaking? And how did it find a way to be heard? Tonight we'll be sharing two deeply unsettling listener stories where ordinary recordings captured something extraordinary. Voices that weren't heard at the time, words that only revealed themselves on playback, and messages that feel far too specific to be coincidence. So with that, are you ready to begin?
I am.
So wherever you are...
As ready as Professor Hans Bender.
Well, you know he's always ready. He is always ready. That's why he's a professor. So, wherever you are, turn the lights down, get comfortable, and listen closely, because tonight you might hear something that wasn't meant for you from beyond the veil. Our first story, The Shush in Westbourne Avenue. If you walk down Westbourne Avenue in Hull, you'll notice something distinctive about many of the houses. They are tall, red brick Victorian terraces with bay windows and high ceilings, the echoes of another era. Once stately homes for single families, many of them have been split into student flats. Their ornate doorways, now home to bicycles instead of carriages, posters instead of oil paintings. In the evenings, when traffic dies down and the nearby bustle of Princess Avenue's bars can be distantly heard, the street feels quiet and almost hollow, as though the walls themselves are listening. It was in one of these converted flats that the following unsettling experience occurred, not to a paranormal investigator, not to someone seeking ghosts, but to an ordinary young woman just trying to relax after a long day. Her name is Rachel, living alone in one of the old Westbourne Avenue houses, who loves puzzle making. On one particular night, her phone was buzzing with messages from a friend, so instead of texting back, she was sending quick audio replies while working on a jigsaw. It was a night like any other, nothing out of the ordinary. Television murmured softly in another room, and the puzzle pieces on the table formed rows of indistinguishable grey and white. At one point, Rachel remarked in a voice note how chaotic the puzzle had become, half distracted, half entertained by the monotony of pieces that all looked the same. Rachel's frustration became clear by her tone and the slip of an expletive or two. When her friend played the voice note, the moment took a turn from mundane to unsettling. Over the sound of Rachel's voice, clear as day, through the hum of air and the shuffle of jigsaw pieces, came a sound that made her friend stop mid-message.
And I don't know why I did it, and I'm angry at myself. I've completed all the edge pieces, and now I can't get any fucking further because it's too hard, and all the pieces look the fucking same.
Did someone just shush you in your own house? Her friend messaged back immediately. As you heard on the recording, a distinct shush. A sound like someone sternly but quietly telling a person to be quiet. A sound that had never been heard by Rachel in real time. Let's be clear, Rachel did not hear it while she was recording and not while she was speaking. It was only when it was played back, clear, deliberate, and out of place, that the implications hit. A human sound, intentional and close and with a tone. It rattled her. Her messages became frantic, a stream of disbelief and unease. I didn't fucking hear that. There is nobody else here. That is the scariest thing ever. And yet when the recording was replayed again and again, it was undeniable. There it was. A voice, calm, but unmistakably human, whispering, shh, over the sound of jigsaw pieces and distant background noise. What made it even more unsettling was what came before it. Nothing. Totally ordinary. No footsteps, no doors closing, just the click of puzzle pieces joining together. Rachel's only other eerie experience in that flat was something her cat once did months later, growling at an empty space in the corner of the room, eyes locked on nothing that any human could see. Her mum, who was visiting at the time, laughed about it. Apparently cats do that, secretly trying to reassure her. But of course, coupled with the unexplained voice on the recording, the cat's behaviour has a different weight now. The building itself, like so many on Westbourne Avenue, was originally one large family residence. Over the decades, it has been carved into individual flats, new walls, new tenants, new lives. But the structure is still old, drafty and damp, full of corners and corridors with histories no one alive can quite trace. Rachel wondered if it was something local to just her flat. She wondered if there had been other reports in neighbouring units. Perhaps she thought this present wasn't bound to a room, but the entire building, as it would have looked originally many years ago. But she never heard of any other unusual or unexplained activity from others in their building. Nothing else like the shush had been captured before or since. No whispers answering questions, no spectral footsteps in the night, just that one moment on a voice note that was never meant to be paranormal at all. And yet there it was, clear as anything, an impossible whisper that seems to linger long after the recording ends. A sound she didn't hear when it happened, a sound that makes you wonder what else goes unnoticed until it's too late to ignore. One thing that must be brought up is that our good friend Mike Covell, who's previously appeared on the podcast, local Hull historian, as you're probably aware. Now, he did some digging into this property to see if there was anything related that could explain the activity that may be present in the house, and I didn't really expect anything to come back, to be fair. However, he did come back with something, and there was a death in that property, and this occurred. A lady died in that house on the 22nd of July 1957. So very, very interesting. It does make you wonder, because I know it sounds like a really weird thing to say, but the shush kind of sounds feminine. I don't know if that's a really weird thing to say, but yeah, it is something that could give further sort of credence to it being a genuine haunting, or I don't know. Very, very difficult to say if the two things are connected, but when you're sort of talking about paranormal activity in the sense of EVP, and then you do have a direct connection to a death within the property, yeah, it's certainly interesting. certainly interesting, and I think it just sort of piles another layer of credibility to the case because of this. So certainly something that does just need to be thrown in to be digested as a part of the of evidence to back up the EVP. I think this is one of the creepiest EVPs I've ever had.
So I think it's all the more creepy and believable because it's not a voice as such, it's not talking, it's not saying anything, it's a noise, and it's a universal noise as well. I think coupled with the fact that these are Victorian age buildings, which was a notoriously prudish time, and the fact that Rachel was, as you heard, swearing like a trooper, it's almost like did some Victorian presence not enjoyed a lady speaking in that way.
Yeah, quite right.
That struck me, but it's just so clear.
Yeah,
and the fact that she didn't hear it is really odd. That starts to make you think what voices are going around, and someone sat behind you shushing you, or otherwise telling you to shut up, but you don't hear it.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, Rachel's voice doesn't even waver. She's just constantly talking at that same tone. Like, there's not even like just a half a second's pause of someone interrupting or anything. She clearly, in my opinion, from the sound of that, she does not hear it. Now, I just need to sort of like highlight a little bit, just explain how we received this recording. So this recording was actually sent to us as a video recording of a screen recording of someone's phone. So we can actually see the messages from WhatsApp where this voice note has been sent. And so when we play it, we're actually watching it and with audio. So we can see the messages afterwards where, as in the story, I sort of read out some of the things that were being said afterwards about there's no one else here, I'm on my own, this is really fucking scary, blah, 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 or whatever it was that it said. They are direct quotes from the messages that are sent in WhatsApp. And we've read it, and it's crazy. It's really, really eerie that there's just these sort of messages and then the odd voice note here and there. But then this screen recording plays the audio and you can see the replies afterwards, and all of it just feels so... There's just so many things into it where you're just like, this is a genuine case of someone experiencing something where they've been like, holy shit, like, I've just captured something really extraordinary. And I think it's probably, like I said, one of the best cases of EVP that feels the most genuine, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the fact that it's a voice recording rather than... So I remember being young and plucking up the courage to call a girl I fancied from the landline, and use my granny's phone, and mid-conversation, which really didn't help with the nerves, there was a load of interference, and then I was literally listening to somebody else's conversation. Just temporarily, that was that, nothing interesting. And you could clearly hear the conversation. It was boring, it wasn't EVP, it wasn't anyone trying to communicate from the dead. And it happens, and you connect into telephone lines.
Yeah.
I think with a voice recording, particularly with modern technology, there's less room for interference and encroachment on your recording.
Yeah.
And that just brings it more to be more convincing for me. And also the fact that it's a clear shh. There's no sound like that, is there?
No.
How could you recreate that? Sweeping brush?
Yeah.
But she would know damn well. And why would someone be sweeping up? And once the least effort ever sweeping.
Yeah. Just that bit.
Yeah.
But also, like, for me, that sounds as if, like, someone is leaning directly into the microphone, because it's so much clearer and so much louder than Rachel's voice. It's almost as if, like, I don't know, the phone's on the side and she's just talking while she's doing her fucking jigsaw, and someone else has just like leaned straight into the phone, and gone, shh,
or even right at her.
Oh, don't.
If you're listening, Rachel, sorry if that freaked you out. But,
if that doesn't help, it probably wouldn't.
Because they probably wouldn't. If my theory is correct and it's a Victorian ghost who didn't enjoy the impropriety, then she might well have, or they might well have shushed Rachel personally rather than the phone.
That's just made me go cold all over, honestly. Oh,
it's really convincing.
It's a very.
I do think the fact that it's not words and it's a sound.
Yep.
Almost any other sound would not be convincing. And nothing.
Yep.
Yeah. So what? But yeah,
because
that
think
gesture.
I think the only argument any skeptic could come up with as a comeback on that, I think, is to say that the entire story is an elaborate hoax. Because I can't think of any other explanation for it. You know, if you was going to be like, okay, yeah, well, it could be this and it could be that, I don't think for anything to be that clear, the only comeback that a skeptic would have would be to turn around and say that it was fake.
Yeah.
Which I don't believe is the case.
Neither do I.
I don't believe it's the case at all. But exactly, I think it's the only thing that a skeptic would be able to turn around and say, oh, well, it's a load of fucking shit. She obviously had a friend sat there next to her and whispered shush into the phone.
Yeah.
Because what else could you say? Oh, yeah, well, it would have been the TV or blah.
It's kind of a really interesting and creepy EVP, but as a hoax, it's shite. Like you would have someone whispering words, something sinister, or it would probably come with loads of other stories about the flat and its history. None of that, apart from the cat looking into a corner,
which cats do.
Which cats do sometimes. Coupled, it's quite weird, but it's not enough to make me think. Not detailed enough to be a hoax.
No, it's not. No, because it usually.
And listening to the recording, that there was no way that somebody was just sat there and that's all they did, just shh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it, great. We'll wait for a paranormal podcast to arise in our city and we'll send that in.
That's it.
Them right up.
It's never. I just love how much that like whole notion of it being a hoax just wound you up then. Really got under your skin, that, didn't it? Because that's what skeptics do, though, isn't it?
One of these things. I guess I speak for us both when I say we're probably at the more sceptical end of being believers. We're open-minded.
Yeah.
We are open-minded, but I
think we like to question.
I reckon closer to the sceptical end if you had to pick a side, but pretty centre ground on this one, if not with politics. Now, I think, it becomes a situation where the explanation is less believable by far than something extraordinary. Yeah. And it did.
I agree. And again, it's the only thing, of all the things I've tried to think, well, it could be this or it could be that, I can't actually come up with anything other than saying it's an elaborate hoax. That's the only explanation I could come up with. Again, not that I believe that for a second, but it's the only thing I could come up with if I was looking at it through a purely skeptical lens, and if there was an absolute skeptical knobhead trying to explain it. It just
I've got to tell you this because I found it utterly hilarious. I've got to say, but I think because of the various paranormal things I follow on Facebook and stuff, I often get things coming up in my news feed, and I've come across a few times this particular guy who exposes obvious frauds. Whether it's there was a guy who was turning up to ghost hunts that he was leading, and he always carried pebbles because he'd like to chuck them and make noises at various places. And there's a lot of cranks out there, so you can understand the skeptics. You really can. And the best one, this is not a joke. This guy said, he was bald as me and you. He said that a demonic entity, slapped him, and that caused alopecia and caused him to become bald. I mean, there's no wonder people are sceptical.
But this is it, isn't it? Why do they have to ruin it? Why do they have to ruin it? It's ridiculous. And this is why, like, you can't have like an EVP like that, which is so like clearly great evidence as proof to the paranormal. But because you get people like that who say they've got alopecia because they were slapped by a demon, the balding demon.
Male pattern baldness, mate. You've got a lot of testosterone. Enjoy yourself. Oh no, I got slapped by a demon.
Yeah. It's a classic trait of being British. We're all fucking bald. It's just one of them things. It's a British trait to be bald.
It is. At some point in your life, you're likely to be bald.
Indeed. How can I justify my baldness? Demon slapped me.
Demon slapped me.
Didn't even wouldn't you even dramatise it? Oh, he fucking straight up Hadoukened me. He absolutely uppercutted the shit out of me.
Threatened to drag my soul to hell and slap me.
Unless I gave up my hair.
Hell.
Instead of being slapped.
And don't allow him to wear a wig.
Yeah.
Be ripping that off at every opportunity.
No! You must be bald! Straight up ripping it off.
Absolutely brilliant. But this explains why, it does wind me up a bit when people are super sceptical, just as it winds me up a bit when people are just open to believing any old Celt. But I think that's Celt as in rubbish, not Celtic.
I thought you said kilts.
Any old kilt. But I think, any extreme's bad, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is.
Like politics again.
Exactly.
Any extreme end is not good. And desperately trying to find an explanation whilst you can understand them, but it's almost like the two opposite ends only exist because of each other. People are so violently skeptical because some people are so ridiculous at believing and telling nonsense stories that it pollutes everything, and that's what you're up against if you're interested in the paranormal, isn't it?
It is because if the thing of like voices bleeding into voice messages was common, like a bit like what you explained there about the whole cross wire thing, which was very common with old landlines and telephone networks. To get a cross wire was not common, but it happened, and people knew it happened. No one ever turned around and said that anything like that was paranormal, because it was a known thing. It's not a known thing to pick up voices in voice notes. No one's ever turned around and said, "Oh yeah, if you're ever doing a voice note, every now and then you might pick up a voice that's not yours." That's not a known thing.
No.
And so therefore, it's another one of those where, again, like when I've been trying to think of, okay, well, when we get to recording the podcast, how could I challenge this from a skeptical perspective? And I genuinely don't have one, other than the fact that it's an elaborate hoax. But like you said, everything that I come back with about it being a hoax is exactly everything that you said, and that is people who create these hoaxes. It's a bit like a thief, isn't it? They never know when to stop. They don't just nick a Mars bar or something like that. They go too far, where it becomes obvious that they are a thief and they're thieving. And then these hoaxes, they're always too big. They're always too elaborate.
Yeah.
The fact that you've just got a single recording that's never been put out anywhere, it's never been pushed out into the public eye for attention or anything like that. This is just one of those things where that when our podcast appeared in the news, they reached out to us. Yeah. And it's...
Yeah, exactly. The thought that Rachel's been sitting on this recording all this time, just waiting for a local podcast to come about.
That's it, a local podcast, which you could give it to any... We're one of hundreds of paranormal podcasts out there. This podcast is not an original thing where we listen to listener stories and we broadcast them. This isn't an original idea. We are aware of that. But the fact that she could have put this out to anybody, anywhere, as proof, quote unquote, proof of the paranormal, but hasn't,
yeah,
then what would be the point of the hoax if you're not going to follow through on it?
Yeah. What do you get out of it?
Yeah.
Remember the old the truth's relative to what you gain from a lie.
Yeah.
That's exactly true in this case.
Exactly. You know what? I think that just sums it up.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, and I think again it's what adds further to the whole. For me, it just proves that it's real. I really do genuinely believe it's great paranormal evidence.
Yeah, I do too. Very creepy.
It's very creepy, very unsettling. I mean, I remember when I played it to Charlotte, and she was just like, "Nope, that's horrible."
Yeah, and there's no, again, because it's not words. There's no pareidolia there. Like it's
clear. It's not even distorted. You know, it's not even remotely distorted. It's clear. You can hear every single word that Rachel's saying. It is clear as day, and the fact that because it's a screen recording of someone's phone, and you can see those WhatsApp messages at the same time. You can see almost in essentially real time it happening. You know, you can where she sends the voice recording, and then the actual text messages, if you will, that follow afterwards. You know, you can see it happening in real time. It's.
I've just sat thinking, could an explanation be for the sound that Rachel moved something on the table? I don't mean purposely to create a hoax. I mean she moved something on the table. Like, does that sound like I'm just running my hand on some paper? I don't know. It just seems that it's really clear.
Say like if I get this piece of paper.
It's not quite as defined, is it?
It sounds like a clear shush.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, if we play it again now.
I don't know why I did it, and I'm angry at myself. I've completed all the edge pieces, and now I can't get any fucking further because it's too hard, and all the pieces look the fucking same.
It just sounds like a shush. It doesn't sound like, and also, why wouldn't have Rachel just gone? Oh, yeah, sorry, I just
moved the box or something.
Oh no, don't worry, I just moved the box. Yeah. I've got nothing on that one.
No,
nothing.
That was my last ditch attempt.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think. You know, when you said it, I was like, maybe, but then just trying to recreate the sound there. If it was
of paranoia, every time you move something, now I'm like, did that sound like a shh?
Did someone say something? So yeah, I think it's it's a great story, and thank you, Rachel. I think it was actually, if I remember rightly, back to the email. I think it was Rachel's mum who sent us that. But either way, thank you very much for sending it to us.
Definitely.
It's a great piece of audio. It's a great story as well. And yes, thank you very, very much indeed. It really means a lot. And it's there for us as one of our best bit of evidence, I think. So, but our next story is I won't let anybody hurt her. There are moments in life that split everything into two halves, before and after. For Mark, that moment came in the form of a voicemail. But to understand the voicemail, we need to understand the pattern, because this wasn't the beginning, as it rarely is. Mark has lived a life balanced on what he calls 50-50s. Moments where things could have gone one way or another. Close calls, narrow escapes, an almost sense that something or someone was tipping the scales. His earliest memory of that particular notion goes back to 1978. He was just 5 years old, staying in a guest house in Great Yarmouth with his family. He woke in the night and saw hair a figure, blue in tone, solid in shape, an older woman with long hair and a prominent nose, not transparent, not mist, not imagination, drifting at the edge of sleep. She was there, at the foot of his bed. When he moved, she moved. When he turned, she was there again. He remembers diving under the covers and staying there for what he felt like was an hour, not drifting in and out of sleep and not half dreaming, simply waiting. That was the first time. There were others, figures in his childhood home, family members who appeared before news of their deaths reached them. Moments of instinct so strong they felt like warnings, whispered directly into them. And then, years later, came the voicemail. His partner had left his house not long before. She called him to say she missed him already, and a song which meant something to the pair of them, had just come on the radio. She recorded a clip of it for him, and that's all it was meant to be, just music. But at that exact time, Mark was in another room, holding a photograph of his grandfather, a man he had been extremely close to. His grandfather had passed. The phone call and message had gone to Mark's voicemail, whilst Mark looked at the photo. And in that moment, Mark says he was emotional, vulnerable, and speaking out loud. He asked just one thing. Don't let anybody hurt her. That was it. One request. Later, when he returned to his phone, he pressed play on the voicemail. The music wasn't what stood out. The song fades, and underneath it, distorted but present, a voice. Not music, not static, a voice. At first, he couldn't make it out. He listened over and over again for days. He thought it was interference, thought he was reaching, thought maybe grief was shaping what he wanted to hear. Until one night, in a quiet room, it clicked, and it was clear. The words aligned with the only sentence he had spoken while holding that photograph. He heard, "I won't let anybody hurt her." He says, when it hit him, when memory connected the question he'd asked with the answer recorded, he didn't sleep for a week. Because it wasn't just the voice, it was the timing. The voicemail had been left at the precise window he was asking his grandfather for protection. He hadn't even consciously linked the two events until later, and that's when everything escalated. After the voicemail, the activity didn't stop. It multiplied. Live phone calls began carrying layered voices, multiple at once, as if several people were trying to speak through the same channel. Not recorded messages, live calls. Friends heard it, work colleagues heard it. He would ring someone and they would ask, "Who else is on this line?" He changed phones. It continued. For a year and a half, voices overlapping, competing. Some dominant, others buried beneath distortion, almost like a frequency hijacked mid-transmission. He believes, and he's clear this is his only theory, that energy travels between phones when they connect, that the ringing itself creates a bridge, and something used it. One day, working away in London, the voices intensified so much he struggled to function. Later he discovered the office space he'd been using was once part of an old hospital, sections of which had housed patients deemed insane decades earlier. He didn't know he didn't know that when it was happening, but the staff there told him others had reported experiences too. The voices followed him home, followed him to work daily for 18 months. And then, during a period where his mental health collapsed under personal strain, it stopped completely. Nothing since. No voices, no dreams, no sensations. Silence. When we asked him how he feels about it now, he didn't describe fear, he described certainty. He says he isn't afraid of dying anymore, because something answered him. He continued, "You can argue coincidence, you can argue interference, you can argue psychology, but when you ask a question out loud, and later hear the direct reply recorded in your absence, it changes you." He told us when he first heard the words clearly, he didn't feel threatened, he felt protected, as if whatever had answered wasn't random, it was personal. So, this one is very interesting. So, we met with Mark, didn't we? He reached out to us after appearing in Hull Live, and he reached out to us, and we went and met him, and we basically interviewed him, and he told us a lot about this in his past, and then we listened to the recording. And bearing in mind, we was in a bar, wasn't we?
Yeah.
And it was quite loud, and we didn't have the best headphones to hear it. So the audio was sent to us, and I listened to it over and over and over again. And I ran it through some editing software, and we've had a little play around with it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play 2 versions of that now for you, and you can have a listen to it. And the first one will just remove the white noise, the majority of the white noise, and it makes it a little clearer. And then there'll be a second recording, and in that particular one, I've told the software to isolate any voice on it. So it'll remove the white noise, but it'll also only play when when the software thinks there's a voice. So what we'll do is I'll play those now, and then we'll talk about them in a second. Okay, so in the second part of the recording, what my editing software as well, I seen as the software was saying, oh yeah, there's a voice here, and that's why it left it in, I added closed captions to it, so subtitles. Now, it did come up with some interesting words. Now, I'm just going to read those out now. How you want me. I am. Oh, you are me. Now, the software, isn't gospel at the end of the day. It's only going to interpret what it thinks it's hearing. It's going to sort of listen out for certain syllables and things like that, and it's just going to capture what it thinks is being said. Just like how subtitles on YouTube isn't perfect. It doesn't always take into account dialect, accents, and things like that. And if you look at subtitles on a video from someone in Yorkshire, it's an absolute disgrace.
I would say it's nothing more than a rough guide, is it?
Yes, exactly. It's very much a rough guide, and it will only pick up what it thinks it's hearing. So the subtitles aren't much to lean into, really. They're not much for evidence of proving or disproving what has been heard. But I think this is a very interesting piece of EVP because, as we mentioned at the start of the episode, I think there's actually a few things that I hear and don't hear in this. So with Mark, he heard I won't let anybody hurt her, and I think if you listen very carefully, you can kind of hear it, but there's other times where I don't hear it, and actually I think it's maybe either on the second recording with the white noise cleared up, or it's the one where I've isolated the voice, where sometimes I think I hear "I won't allow it." So, which could also apply to the question being asked.
Definitely.
But I must admit, I think this is a very one that's very much open to interpretation, and I'd be very, very interested to know what some of our listeners think, if they'd be interested in sharing their thoughts on our Facebook, because this is definitely one of those where with the last story, the possibility of ruling out through other means what it could be and what it couldn't be, I think there is also the potential here that, and again I have to say this because we aren't a podcast that is saying that everything is, our podcast is just to tell stories.
Yeah.
To tell stories.
We're not debunking or confirming.
No, we're not paranormal. We said this in the first episode. We're not paranormal investigators.
Yeah.
We're not paranormal experts. We have experienced things ourselves, and we're not here to take your stories and to debunk them or anything like that. That's not what this podcast is. But we do like to talk about your stories because your stories are great, and this is a great story too. And speaking to Mark was great. He was a lovely, lovely guy. It was great meeting him and having a sit down and having a drink and so, just talking about his life. And it was great to meet him, and it was a real pleasure to meet him. And but yeah, I think one thing that we also have to consider is that there is the potential that this is heavy distortion on a mobile line
Of the song that was playing.
That they could just be potentially lyrics that have just been completely distorted. It's very hard.
And Mark can't remember the song.
No.
So it's difficult for us to try and identify the lyrics. But then I think even if you knew the song, it might be quite hard, because then it brings into it, are you just hearing what you think you should be hearing because that's the lyrics of the song?
Yeah. Exactly.
One thing that struck me, which our listeners haven't got the benefit of, but we have, is in meeting Mark, there is absolutely no way that this is a hoax, in terms of he absolutely believes it.
Yeah.
There's other things that have happened to him in his life, as you described. This isn't a one-off. And I didn't personally get any inkling whatsoever that this was, again, trying to wind up a local podcast,
Yeah.
I just didn't get that at all.
And also, Mark, without giving too much away of his identity and his story and everything, is that Mark's had this evidence for a long time.
Yeah.
He's this happened to him a very long time ago now, and he's been sitting on this so much so that it's actually a recording of the voicemail. He doesn't have that phone and that number anymore, but he recorded the voicemail on another device.
Yeah.
So he still has it. Which is again why it was so long ago.
Yeah.
If he was intending to use this to create an elaborate hoax or whatever, then
Exactly.
he could have done it a long time ago.
He would have done it a long time ago.
Yeah, and instead he's had it all this time, and it was only because he saw us in the news again when he thought, well, maybe these people would like to hear it, which obviously we did. We loved to hear it.
And I wonder what listeners think, because I must say, and careful not to show any sort of disrespect to Mark's granddad, but I felt really uneasy when I first heard it.
I still do.
And I don't know if you were expecting that, so that made you feel uneasy. But I suppose Mark himself said he didn't sleep for a week after it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's, even if it is his granddad, it was benevolent, a protection rather than anything horrible. I guess you've heard something that you shouldn't hear. And maybe that's the cause of the uneasiness.
Exactly. Even I've listened to it a lot through editing and everything else, and there's not been a single time when I've listened to it that my hairs haven't stood on end, because it just doesn't sound nice.
No.
Like it just, and again, that's not to say your granddad sounds like a lunatic, or anything like that. It's nothing like that at all. It's just that, again, like you said, it kind of sounds like something you shouldn't be hearing more than anything, and it does just sound a little eerie.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
and I don't think I do fully accept it could be. It absolutely could be the song that was being played for Mark's benefit, but I don't think it sounds like tuneful music. I think, other than with extremely heavy distortion, which it could be, I think you'd be able to tell it was a song. And I don't base that on any knowledge. It's just how I feel. I think just what I think.
I think what also pulls me back a little bit from it being distortion is that the distortion is so heavy. I kind of feel like if your phone's having that much problems with signal, I think you would have lost the signal. I think you would have lost it. I think the phone would have cut out. It's
driving me mad what the song is. So I will say openly and clearly, if anyone can identify it from that bit at the beginning, I will personally give you £50 immediately. It's not open to Mark, by the way.
A £50 reward.
Absolutely.
You know what?
Musical identification. And we've done a lot of this in the past, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Remember trying to obtain the classical music from school that we liked?
Indeed. Humming into phones.
Hummed into
like
Shazam.
Early Shazam when you had to do
didn't work.
No, it didn't.
Didn't work. And then, of all places, we heard it playing the takeaway and got the person to Shazam it.
Yeah, when you had to press 2580 down your phone.
Oh my God, yeah, of course you did.
Before it was an app, my friend.
Yeah.
You had to ring them up, and it worked.
God, what classy takeaways we used to visit.
Indeed. Playing classical music. Indeed. Doner kebab and bit of bark, please. So yeah, it's an incredible story. It was great meeting Mark and having a chat with him, and regardless of what any of us thinks, as long as it has given him some kind of comfort, solace, whatever it may be. I've
got to agree with Mark as well. The timing is odd.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it's interference, distortion, whatever you want to call it, why then, when he was looking at a picture of his granddad and asking him something specific?
Yep.
It's a bit unusual, because it was a mobile phone, obviously, not that long ago. It's a while back, but it's not landline at your granny's long ago. And there is less crossover, definitely, and especially when you're leaving a voicemail.
Yeah.
If it's a two-way conversation, yeah, maybe. I've never come across it with a mobile, I must say. But I think when leaving a voicemail, I found it weird that anybody would be there'd be any interference from other calls.
Yeah.
So it's just if something somehow distorted the sound of the music and the song, and that's what you're hearing. That's my skeptical explanation.
Yeah.
For that sound, I'm not convinced that's the explanation. I don't know what it is, but I think if you go in with the skeptical hat, that's what you've got to go on.
I think based on what the premise of EVP is, and how we opened this episode, and how we spoke about how the explanation of EVP is, people come at it from two different angles, a scientific one and a paranormal one. I think there's plenty of answers to be found within the paranormal category, but I think there are also plenty from a scientific one that both balance the scales perfectly. And I think everyone is gonna lean either side into it. I don't really know where I sit with it, because as always, just as we are, and we've said this countless times, we even said it earlier, for everything that I try and explain with a scientific reasoning, I've got my paranormal one that balances it out.
Yeah.
And you've pretty much said everything that I've thought of, where it's like, well, I've got plenty of reasons to believe it's paranormal, but then we've also got even just auditory pareidolia straight away being one of them. And I think, I do just think that it's one of those pieces of evidence that could definitely divide a crowd, I think.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that one case or one explanation isn't as legitimate as another.
Yeah. And I think, and you do have to, I can't remember who said this to me, and I know it's not something I read, somebody said this, and it is always expect normal rather than paranormal, and ordinary before extraordinary. I'm sitting around having conversations with Sherlock Holmes, obviously.
Well, it's similar to what we've said.
I like that, and I think that's true, and so you don't get carried away with believing everything. That's a nice balance. But if you can't find the ordinary or the normal, then that's your next step.
Of course it is. Yeah. Well, I mean, these are the kinds of conversations we've had with Mike Covell, isn't it?
Yeah.
Normal before paranormal, natural before supernatural.
Absolutely.
And this is it, isn't it? It's and this is one of those for me where
Perhaps it was Mike that said it. I don't know. I can't remember where I heard
ordinary before extraordinary. I think that's just the same testament in it, really. I am very, very much, again, because I've pored over the audio as much as I have when I was editing it as well. That's why I am very much I don't know, not that I put much stock in the subtitles or anything either, because it's only here. I don't put much stock in that, because again, the software is literally just. And with
search lyrics, it's worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Based on that, with I don't think we're too bad at finding songs.
No.
Given the past history, but I can't find it. I thought the beginning sounded like the Everly Brothers. But I've listened to a couple of songs just tonight before we started recording.
We tried again, didn't we? No,
it's not.
No, we've tried all sorts. I mean, if someone knew what this song was, it would probably clear a few points up for us, really.
Maybe.
Probably on either side.
Yeah.
It'd probably eliminate a few possibilities of what this could or could not be. Just having the song alone, I think.
Yeah.
But
I do think that timing thing is quite interesting.
I agree. That alone is cause enough to make you question.
Yeah.
Whether it's paranormal or auditory pareidolia.
Yeah.
That it immediately just throws it all into question.
And I think I said to you earlier, Brett, the recording reminds me a little bit of the spirit boxes. So yes, we're not paranormal investigators, but we've done some paranormal investigations, and whether they're led by others or ourselves. We did one recently, didn't we? Just us.
Yep.
And I find the spirit box my favourite piece of ghost hunting kit.
Yes.
Now, for people who don't know what it is, it's basically a scanner, and it scans snippets of radio stations. And so sometimes you will hear just football commentary or a song or whatever. But sometimes it'll start responding to your questions with words, or it'll shout something out or whatever. And the most recent ghost hunt that we did together, which was at Elmwood House, in Stockton-on-Tees. We got a lot out of the spirit box, didn't we? We used it quite a lot.
Some of it, we will be doing an episode on the Elmwood House, and we'll also be tying that into our experience there. But yeah, we had some extraordinary responses through the spirit box,
We did.
which were clear as day.
Yeah.
And I wish we'd recorded more there, to be fair.
Yeah.
We took our mics with us and we didn't even use them.
No.
And we probably should have done, really, because when we... Again, we're not going to go too much into it now, but we asked, and I'm not going to say it because it'll be better when we talk about it in the episode, but we said, oh, can you interact with something that we had in the room? And then all of a sudden the spirit box turned around and said exactly what it was that we asked them to touch.
It did.
You know, and it was extraordinary, wasn't it? It was just like, that just said that. And that was not auditory pareidolia either. That was clear.
And it couldn't be, and that it'll become clear in the episode. It couldn't have been, and it's not. To my knowledge, there are no song lyrics with that word.
With that word, no. I mean, no, that was clear as dick. Honestly, that was like so fucking clear.
It was,
and I was just like, holy shit. And then obviously other stuff happened around it as well, didn't it? But I think that's probably the best time I've ever used a spirit box. And actually, because sometimes I'm not 100% sure on spirit, again, because of, I keep saying that for the words, but because of auditory pareidolia, sometimes I think you can hear what you want to hear.
I do.
And but I think that is probably, other than like some of the other experiences we've had when we've spoke about it a few times in our episodes now, but when we was at Thorn, but I think us personally using one, that was really quite extraordinary. That
I agree.
And I do think that recording that Mark gave us, it is a little bit like the kind of thing that you get from a spirit box, where you get a little bit of lyrics and all of a sudden you're hearing things which sound like words. It kind of did feel a little bit like that.
It did feel a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Especially since, we've done that recent ghost hunt, and then, for me hearing the recording again, I know you've been listening to it a lot, but for me hearing it again now, after that, it did kind of remind me of that spirit box feel to it.
If we'd heard that on a spirit box, we'd be like, there was words there. That said something then.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we would do. We won't be like, it's a lot of interference.
Yeah, exactly.
We would have definitely said that there was words there. Whether we knew what the words were, we would know that they were words.
Yeah.
But there's one bit in there though that I think is clearer than anything that I've heard. Whether Mark heard what he believed he heard, that I will let anybody hear. I thought I heard, I will not allow it. That's what sounded really clear to me. And they're the bits where I'm like, that sounds like someone speaking.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think I can 100% hand on heart say I can hear, I won't let anybody hurt her, but I think I'd be pretty comfortable saying that I'm hearing, I will not allow it.
Yeah, some sort of phrase, isn't it? That fits with the protection Mark was asking for.
Yeah, still fits with the request.
Yeah.
So yeah, excellent. Another great story, and thank you, Mark, for I know you said that you'd been sitting on this for a long time, and it's something you've constantly thought of, and you've kept it to yourself quite a bit as well. So thank you for your for your courage to come forward and to trust us with the story as well. We really do appreciate it. So thank you, and I really hope it continues to give you the comfort that you clearly said that it has. So yeah, thank you very much.
I think it's important to point out, we really are honoured with the trust that people showing us, sending in any story. So this episode, Rachel and Mark, thank you very much for trusting us. Hope we've done it justice. But it's important to point out again something that Brett pointed out earlier, which is we're not here to debunk stories. So if that is putting anyone off for any reason, we absolutely wouldn't. That's not what we're interested in doing.
No.
And we will also, and Brett in particular, has worked quite closely with Mark, but if there's any portion of your story you don't want included, or you don't want certain names mentioned or made reference to, then we will 100% respect your wishes. That's one thing I think we can say absolutely hand on heart.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really important thing to mention there, Lee, is that the story that we've put out of Mark's was put out with Mark's agreement that it was something that was somewhat open to interpretation. Yeah. We explained what we had found through the editing of his audio and the sort of investigation that we kind of did on it, and we explained what we thought of it. And when we put the story together into a script format for us to read as a story on the podcast, we sent it to him first to give the okay, just as we did Rachel's story as well. We sent that as well and said, are you happy for this story to be read out? We don't just take a story and go, right, okay, well, we're just going to tear this to pieces now.
No.
We are 100% respectful of your story, and we want to share your story in the most respectful manner. So yeah, these stories were sent for their approval before we've read them, and we said to Mark, this is how we're going to present the story, and we're going to very much leave it up to the listeners to hear what they're hearing, and it would be a great conversation piece if people would listen to it and share their thoughts on Facebook and Instagram, etc. And
once again, it's met the aim of our podcast tonight, hasn't it? I've really enjoyed talking about this. Hope people enjoy listening.
And it's creepy as
to
well.
Us talk about it. It's very creepy.
It's a creepy story.
It's very creepy.
Which is again is always the purpose of the podcast. It's designed to be creepy, but it's also to get you thinking. To think like, well, maybe I've heard things like that on the phone before. What if I've heard something actually? And it's just a great conversation piece. We loved it, and yeah, we would love anyone to share their story, whether it's EVP or anything. If you have got an EVP story and you've got some evidence, then of course send it in. But any paranormal subject, whether that's ghosts, spirits, UFOs, mimics, werewolves, vampires, folklore, urban legends, anything in between, you name it, send it to us. You know where to send it to. If you don't, you can send it by direct messaging on Instagram, which is at Beyond the Veil, the podcast. And we have the Facebook page and group, which are both just Beyond the Veil podcast. The page is more used for announcements about upcoming episodes and the release of episodes. The group's more designed for conversations across the group members who can all talk to each other. But you can just direct messages on there as well. And you can also just email us, which is btvpodcaststories@gmail.com. And we'd really appreciate your thoughts on these episodes. That'd be great, just a bit of feedback. But yeah, if you have got a story that you'd like to share with us, then of course, by all means, please do. So, anything from you?
No, I think
Rear Admiral wise.
Said my piece.
Said your piece. Now, quiet down. No, I thought it was great. I loved it. It was really good. That creepy. And again, just to echo what you said, thank you very much, Rachel and Mark, for your stories. They were very good. So, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We really, really do appreciate it. And it's great to see our listener numbers growing all the time. We're always keeping an eye on how the podcast is doing and how it's growing, and it's nice to see it growing at the rate that it is. We've got a nice little healthy audience base right now. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody. It really does mean a lot to us. But we're going to leave you with this. Maybe these and the other recorded stories are nothing. just interference, distortion, a trick of the mind trying to find meaning in noise. Or maybe it was something else. Because once you've heard it, once you've picked out the words, once your mind locks onto a voice that shouldn't be there, you can't unhear it. It doesn't just exist in the recording, it stays with you. In the quiet moments, in the silence after the sound fades, in the spaces where you begin to wonder, what if it wasn't random? What if something really was trying to speak? And if that's true, then how many times have we missed it? How many voices have passed us by, unnoticed? Or worse, how many have we already heard without realising? So tonight, when the room's quiet, when the world falls still, and all you can hear is the faint hum of silence, listen carefully, because somewhere between the noise and the nothing, something might be listening back from beyond the veil.